Have you ever been on a flight, looked out the window, and just wondered, why does the ground look like that? A perfect grid in one spot, but a total jumbled mess somewhere else. Well, believe it or not, that patchwork is actually a hidden code. And today, we're going to learn how to read it.
Right, so why does the American Midwest look like this perfect, neat checkerboard, while the East Coast looks, well, kind of wonky? It's one of the biggest visual puzzles you can see from 30,000 feet up. And the answer, it turns out, tells this amazing story about who we are and exactly where we came from.
All right, to crack this code, we have to put on our detective hats. We're going to become landscape detectives. And the very first clue is realizing that the patterns we see down there are anything but random.
That's right. Every single property line, every farm, every little village layout. It was all a deliberate choice made by the people who settled there. They were literally writing their own story onto the land. And we can still read those stories today if we know what to look for.
So, what are the basic letters in this landscape alphabet? Well, it turns out there are three fundamental ways people tend to organize themselves on the land. We're going to start with a pattern that's super common in places like traditional Europe.
So this is what we call a clustered or nucleated settlement. Just picture a classic old world village, right? All the houses, the church, the shops, they're all huddled together in the middle. The farmland is all on the outside, but everybody lives together in this central communal hub.
And there's a really clear logic to this. Living so close together means you can share services, it builds strong social bonds, and, this was a big one back in the day, it offered protection. There's safety in numbers. It's a pattern that was really born from a need for community and security.
Okay, now let's flip that idea completely on its head and look at the total opposite, the dispersed settlement. In this case, homes are spread way, way apart. Each house sits on its own big chunk of land. I mean, think about a ranch in Australia or a farm out in Iowa. It's all about independence and having your own space.
But see, this pattern only really works if you can assume a couple of things. One, that you're safe from attack, and two, that you've got plenty of resources like water to go around. So the big trade-off here is you're swapping that tight-knit community for a whole lot more privacy and a lot more land for your family to work.
And our third main pattern is the linear settlement. Just like the name says, everything is built in a long line. The main organizing feature here isn't a town center or wide open space. Nope, it's all about a shared line of access, usually a river or a major road. The logic behind this is actually pretty brilliant. By setting up farms in these long, skinny strips, everybody gets a piece of the most valuable resource, whether that's a river for shipping goods or a road to get to market. It's a really fair and super practical system when you think about it.
Okay, so we've seen the what, the clustered, the dispersed, and the linear patterns. But that still doesn't totally explain the whole checkerboard versus wonky shapes thing. To really get that, we need to look at the invisible rulebook that was used to draw the map in the first place.
This rule book is called a survey method, and it's basically just the legal system for defining where your property starts and ends. And depending on which colonial power settled an area, they brought a very different rulebook with them, creating these dramatically different landscapes that we can still see today.
And that brings us to the three main survey systems that really shaped North America. You can think of them as the signatures of three different authors, the British, the French, and of course, the brand new US government. Each one left a totally distinct mark on the land.
And here it is. This is our detective's cheat sheet. Seriously, this one slide pretty much explains everything. You've got the British meets and bounds system, which is what gives us those wonky East Coast shapes. Then there's the French long lot system, with those long strips along the rivers. And finally, the American township and range system. Yep, that's the source of that perfect Midwestern checkerboard.
So let's break it down. The Mets and bounds system that the British used was descriptive. The property lines would literally say things like, go from the big oak tree, walk 100 paces north until you hit the bend in the stream. Now that makes sense when you're on the ground, but from the air, it creates a really irregular, almost organic-looking pattern. Now the French, with their long lat system, they were all about economics and fairness. Their main goal was to stop any one person from hogging a key resource, like a river. So by giving everyone a long, skinny slice of land, they made sure the largest number of settlers could get access to that vital transportation route. And then along came the Americans. After the Revolution, they had a huge problem: how to settle all that vast Western territory quickly, cheaply, and in an orderly way. The answer was the township and range system.
It was pure, simple logic. They just laid this massive grid of perfect squares over the entire landscape, ignoring mountains, rivers, whatever, and then sold off the pieces.
But you see, this grid wasn't just about being practical. It was a whole philosophy. It was championed by Thomas Jefferson and made official by the Land Ordinance of 1785. This checkerboard was seen as the perfect way to create a nation of independent farmers, each with their own uniform plot of land. It was literally a vision for a democratic society written right onto the map.
So, we've connected the patterns on the ground to the survey systems that created them. Now it's time for the final clue. A single, powerful idea that ties this whole thing together and turns you into a true landscape detective.
The term is sequent occupants. I know it's a bit of a fancy phrase, but it's really just a way of saying that a landscape is like a history book. Every group of people that lives on a piece of land, these sequent occupants, they leave their cultural mark behind, creating these layers of history that we can still see today.
So think about it. The wonky shapes of New England? That's Chapter 1, written by the British. The neat, orderly grid of the Midwest? That's Chapter 2, authored by the U.S. government. And those linear lots down along the Mississippi and Louisiana? That's another chapter, written by the French. They are all visible imprints of sequent occupants.
So there you have it. You have the tools now. You're officially a landscape detective. The next time you're on a plane, look down. Because you're not just seeing fields and roads anymore. You're seeing the lingering ghosts of history, British, French, and American, all telling you their story. The only question is, what will you see?